That breaking news we're following today at 5. Guilty. The verdict read just moments ago for both defendants in the murder trial of two men accused of killing Aiden McClendon. You see his picture right here. He was just a small child. His
precious little face. Kquame Richardson and Henry Lee Hayes have just been found guilty on all counts. And this comes as two separate juries deliberated their fate. On your sides, Ann Schindler has been in the courtroom. She just walked out of the courtroom and joins us now live with more. Ann?
That's right, Heather, Anthony. I'm on the ground floor of the Duval County Courthouse right now, and up on the 4th floor, the family of Aiden McClendon is still in the courtroom. After they read the verdict, a lot of tears from both sides of the aisle in this case. Obviously, Aiden McClendon's family very relieved and very upset about the news of the verdict, just kind of the emotion of this trial. But on the other side of the courtroom, Kquame Richardson's family and Henry Hayes' family also dissolving into tears. Now, there are a lot of questions in this case that the testimony didn't answer and couldn't answer. We didn't hear from either defendant. We never heard from the victim's uncle, the man that prosecutors say was the intended target of this drive-by in January 2016, but that man refused to cooperate. Now, prosecutors say the evidence did prove that Henry Hayes and Kquame Richardson caused the violent death of Aiden McClendon. They introduced DNA evidence, eyewitness testimony, and most salient of all is the social media evidence that they brought in, the YouTube videos, the Facebook Live videos showing what they said was gang threats and retaliatory violence. The defense attorneys had pushed back on this, calling the evidence circumstantial and the witnesses unreliable. But the defendants' former friends who've known each other since childhood eventually implicated each other. Kquame Richardson even argued that a key state witness and former gang member might have been to blame. But prosecutor London Kite dismissed all of that. She reminded jurors of a critical piece of evidence, a bloody bullet that was found that matched one of the guns recovered from the defendants. Okay, well, I don't think we have the sound from her there, but at any rate, I spoke to the family and a liaison for the family. They're not going to talk today. They want to wait until after sentencing, but they did say they're very grateful for the community support. Live at the Duval County Courthouse, Ann Schindler, First Coast News, on your side.